Hello, everyone. Welcome and thanks for joining another live stream on the VS Code channel. I'm your host, Ronald Adolph, and we have an exciting show for you today. So I'm not going to waste any time, and I want to hurry up and just bring our guest so we could just jump right into it. Reed Carlberg, how are you?
I'm good, Ronald. How are you?
I'm doing good, doing good.
Good.
Folks, by the way, as we go through the live stream, please go ahead and drop all your questions in the comments, and then we'll just be interactive and respond to them. But we're going to be talking about a keyword you might have heard of, SharePoint, but it's SharePoint Embed. So, Reed, can you explain what SharePoint Embedded is?
I can. So it's a brand new technology. It's an Azure service. So it's interesting. If you're out there and you heard the SharePoint, you're probably thinking, well, it's an M365 name. And that's true, but it really is an Azure service. And the whole goal of SharePoint Embedded is it lets you insert M365 file and document management capabilities into whatever app you're building. So you could be building an app, which is a web app or a mobile app, or maybe it's an ISV app, or it's an enterprise line of business app, whatever it is. You can use SharePoint Embedded to actually surface document management capabilities inside your app.
Okay. Now, the word SharePoint is in there. So is it using SharePoint in any way, or it's just happens to be sharing the name? And
well, okay, we've spent a couple of decades in SharePoint working out how enterprises want to do document management as part of apps. And so it actually does store files and documents inside a customer's M365 tenant. And so from that standpoint, it is using SharePoint capabilities, but it's actually putting those files and documents inside an isolated partition of M365. And so if you're an app developer, you actually have full control over the contents of this partition that's logically isolated and separate from SharePoint Online. So the key thing is, key thing is you want to make sure that you're not mixing up SharePoint Online and SharePoint Embedded, because they're two different things.
Got it. Charlie just joined. Hi, Charlie. How you doing? Thanks for joining. All right. Well, then this is cool. Well, let's just jump into it and see what we're talking about.
Great. So I'm going to just do a quick little overview here. Don't worry, we're not going to spend too long in slides. But I want to start off with this fundamental truth that we're all experiencing today, and that is that apps are better with documents. Now, this has been true for a long time. There's lots of giant enterprise apps out there that also manage documents. But today we're in the world of AI apps. And this is especially true with AI apps because docs are where the knowledge is. And so when you start thinking about how you build a great AI app, documents are, generally speaking, a core part of it. But the challenge is that when you are actually working with documents, they introduce a whole bunch of new questions for you. So if you're a developer and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to add these documents into whatever app I'm developing, you have to figure out all of these questions, right? And so the big ones are, things like, how do you interact with documents? How do you make sure that your documents are stored in a compliant manner? This might be everything from geographic restrictions to regulatory compliance issues around things like CCPA and GDPR and those type of privacy regulations. You might want to think about, how do I do e-discovery? And then you might want to think about how do you make sure that the knowledge in these documents is only available to people with the right security. And so this is where SharePoint Embedded comes in. So SharePoint Embedded, it's an AI-only headless version of SharePoint specifically designed for apps. It's an AI-forward platform. It is the fastest way to go ahead and build modern apps that scale and manage documents. And it delivers really 4 big things that you want to think about in terms of document management capabilities.
Okay.
So one is, go ahead.
So real quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to think in terms of like a real world use. I used to work at a company, it was like an insurance company, and we built an app that created documents through the app. It was like insurance documents that would become PDFs. Are we talking about documents in this context or documents in some other context?
No, that's a great example. And so a typical insurance company, you know, they're going to have documents that they output as PDFs, but then they're also going to have a wide variety of inbound documents that are typically part of a customer interaction, right? So you might have a claim or an application. You might have a spreadsheet, which is an estimate. You might have pictures, which are, you know, either on their own or embedded into a document. And so when you talk about documents, what we're talking about right now is documents connected to that business process that you just mentioned. So that's a great example.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about, you know, how you work with these, SharePoint Embedded is designed to really give you that full roadmap of everything that you're going to need to manage files and documents at scale. And I'm not going to drain this whole slide, but this is just a sampling of the M365 features that you get when you're going to go ahead and actually talk about working with documents in your custom app with SharePoint Embedded. Now, one of the ones that I always like to call out here, it's funny because developers tend to sort of forget that this is a requirement, right? But one of them is collaboration. And so in the old world, actually collaborating on a Word document that's uploaded as part of a special app is actually kind of challenging. You got to figure out how to download it. You got to figure out how to do the changes and collaborate everything else. And with SharePoint Embedded, you get one-click collaboration. And I'm going to show you that in action here in just a second. But essentially, you just get a URL, and then your user can open that up in the web client, or they can open that up in the desktop client, whatever they want, right? And it has full features. It's got all the collaboration, presence indicators, comments, sharing, everything that you would really want. So before I get into the, oh, wait, one more thing. This is actually, you were asking about how this works in the relationship with SharePoint.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about a Microsoft 365 tenant, this is kind of an abstract version of it, right? We have this storage platform that is universal. It goes across the entire tenant. And on there, we already have these partitions, SharePoint Online and OneDrive. And today, we're not talking about those.
Okay.
We're talking about this dedicated, isolated partition over here on the right, the SharePoint Embedded.
Okay.
SharePoint Embedded introduces this new primitive called file storage containers. Don't worry, I'm going to show you what those are, right?
Okay.
This is a way for you to manage these documents, and it's a way to model your business and also to model your security boundaries around this very sensitive content where the knowledge really is. And now you can see that we got a couple of apps in here. You can actually have hundreds of apps in your tenant, all with their own separate dedicated partition to manage files and documents. Does
All
that make
right.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kimboa Andrew is excited about this because she says that she's actually working on an enterprise app and was researching how users can collaborate on documents. Now, in terms of the collaboration, are there
Yeah.
limitations, or is that not, or is that something you're going to like mention when you're showcasing this? Like in terms of limitations of like how many people could collaborate at once, you know what I mean?
Well, so, you know, it's really using the core M365 collaboration system. And so we don't have any artificial limits on there. We surface the whole capability. And so if you have a whole bunch of people that need to collaborate on it, they would interact with documents in SharePoint Embedded the same way they would in M365.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And remember, the key thing here is that this is all, you're surfacing this capability as part of your app. So you're building your web app or you're building your mobile app or whatever. And all of these capabilities now come forward into your app so that they can actually do that collaboration in M365 the way that they would want to. But it's still controlled and managed by your app because this is just an API.
All right. Okay. Cool. Let's see.
Okay, so before I get to a demo, I'm just going to let you know that we do have some hands-on training coming up. And so if you are interested in actually learning more about this, this is a good screenshot slide for you. It has a bunch of resources that you can get to. But of course, you can also comment, and I'm sure we'll put these in the comments here at the end. So with that, let's get out of slides and probably not go back into them. And we're going to go to a demo. And so I'm going to actually show you how to build this. It's a pretty fun one here. You'll see that this is just something that I built here. I actually built it in VS Code with agent mode. And I'm going to go ahead and sign in with Microsoft. Now, it already has my username and password in there. So what I'll do now is I'm going to just search. And so I've got a couple of documents that this app knows about. And I'm going to do that one-click thing that I talked about, right? So one click, and I'm in the web client where I can go ahead and edit this and say, hello, VS Code Live. right?
Mhm.
And Reynold, if you were part of this tenant, you and I could actually collaborate back and forth on this pretty easily. So this is the core of what it is that I'm talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Basic question.
Mm-hmm.
In the word tenant in this context, what's considered a tenant?
Okay, this is great. I'm really glad you asked that because I have a bunch of sort of standard assumptions that I bring to it, right? And my assumption when I talk about a tenant is that it's an M365 tenant. So if you think back
Okay.
to our picture, all the files and documents are stored inside an M365 tenant.
Okay.
So I'm interacting with that tenant via an API, and I'm doing that through whatever app I create. And again, that app can be a web app like this one, or it could be a mobile app, etc.
Got it. All right. Cool.
So let me show you the core primitives that we're talking about. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to first start by creating a new container. And this container is just going to be called 5, say the 15th. Sure. My description is kind of boring, but I'll create this. Now, in the background, this is actually instantiating one of these very lightweight file and document management primitives. And when I go in here, I can view documents, and you see there are no documents in here today. So I'm going to go
Mhm.
ahead and click on upload some files. And let's see. We'll upload some pet related files today. And so we'll go ahead and do that. And
Kimboa
it
says
uploads
that
them.
currently in her React app,
Mm-hmm.
she is only using Office Web View, and
Got
that
it.
is great.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So I actually think that web view is a very powerful one, but typically what happens is as soon as you can view something, you want to be able to edit it. And then as soon as you want to edit it, you want to be able to edit it with your friends and your coworkers, right? And so really what this does is it gives you that full capability. And so I just uploaded these. And so I'll go ahead now and I'll bring up a Word doc. And again, it's one click. And here I am, right, in the regular Word web editor. And let's see, I'll make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. Sorry about that. There you go. But then you can kind of see over here on the right-hand side, I've got this editing. And if I want to, I can even come down here and open it in desktop. And if I had my system set up so that it automatically opened in desktop, it would respect that. And so it would see that URL, it would know that it needed to open in desktop, and it would just open right away. So it's that
Okay.
one-click collaboration experience that really does make a big difference.
So right now we're already
Mhm.
using SharePoint Embed, and that
Yep.
made it able to have that one click. If we weren't using SharePoint Embed, what
Mhm.
was the pain that we're going to experience?
So let's say you're storing something in something like Azure Blob Store. So first of all, Azure Blob Store is a great cloud storage service. It is not designed to be integrated with clients like Microsoft 365, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And so what you would first have to do is you'd have to get that file from the cloud store into a place where you can open it with SharePoint, with Word, Excel, or PowerPoint.
Okay.
And once you do that, then you would make your changes and then you would have to write it back.
Okay.
That's a real pain point for some of our clients who are managing documents at scale that way. And so this actually saves that process very easily.
Got it. Christian has a question here. Is there a way to access the source code for this web example?
Yeah, in fact, you can go to, let's see, I'm going to try and type, well, this is just the studio, but you can get to aka.ms/SPE-samples, and you will get to all of our sample code. This one is actually one that we're going to build here in just a second. So I'm going to show you how to actually build this using VS Code agent mode here in just a second. And so you can go to that, or you can actually just wait for a second. Now, one of the things that I do like to show is we are talking about how do we do Copilot with this. And so I'm going to go in here into economic history. And you can see I've got a whole bunch of documents that are in here. And if you look over here on the right, I have this chat. And so this chat is actually Copilot chat against my content stored in SharePoint Embedded. And so the first thing we're going to ask is I'm going to say, hey, do we know about any banks? Ooh, that's terrible typing. There we go. And you'll see it's going to go ahead and look for a second through this, just like you would expect. And then it's going to come up and say, yes, here's a whole bunch of bank related information. And so you can see that there's First Chicago National Bank. And if I click now on this particular reference, right, which is a core part of how Copilot works, you get that citation. If I click on that, it goes ahead and brings me back to this one. Now, this is the one I happened to modify a second ago, right? You saw me add that hello VS Code live. And so you can see exactly now how Copilot works, as well as how the SharePoint Embedded and PowerPoint collaboration work. So I'll go ahead and close those. And then I'll say, hey, tell me more about ABN AMRO. And so then, of course, it's going to do the AI thing where it goes in and says, okay, let's find the docs, and then let's go in and see what information we have in the docs. And it will give you citations from all of this stuff, which is all based on my content here in SharePoint Embedded.
Kimbo had another question here. She says, can SharePoint Embedded be opened in-app?
This is a good one. Okay, so when you're building an app and you want to preview a document, you can preview a document in an iframe in whatever app you want. But when you go into edit and collaboration mode, that's actually going to open up in a new tab. And that's part of how we work with Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. It's just the way the system works. And so when you're editing, you cannot be in an iframe, but when you're previewing, you can.
All right.
Okay. So pretty fun here in terms of how Copilot works. And if we wanted to, of course, we could click on these things. And if we wanted to say, can you provide more details about sustainability? Ooh, I don't know if we have that. Let's see what it says. I honestly have no idea.
Can you control plus to make this a little bigger so we could read the text?
I can. There you go. How's that?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. And so now I have this full AI assistant that's built into your app that's working along with all the documents that you've uploaded. And again, what's interesting is, of course, you get these citations so that you can instantly click into them and work with them from there. And so you can imagine where you used this insurance example before, where you're interacting with this insurance app and these insurance documents through a Copilot style LLM. And then you can get in and you can collaborate on things with a single click. And then you can go back and resume your flow of work.
Wow, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So that's the demo. That's actually what we're going to build, right? So we haven't actually spent a whole lot of time in VS Code yet. Should I show you now how you can actually get started and try this for free?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's do that.
Let's do that. Cool. So I'm going to go over here into the regular VS Code. This is the stable version. We're going to go over into the other one here, the Insiders Edition here in just a second.
Okay.
But what you can do inside VS Code is you can go to a SharePoint Embedded plugin. And this is designed to make the whole thing super easy for you. As you might expect, with a bridging technology that connects Azure capabilities with M365 tenants, there's a couple of things that have to come together in order to make this work. When you're just getting to know it, the easiest way to get started is to do this, is to follow the SharePoint Embedded plugin. So I'm going to go ahead and install that real fast. There we go. And then we're going to go down here. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to connect to an M365 tenant. And so this can be a regular production M365 tenant, or it could also be a, let's see, probably make this bigger. How's that? There we go.
Yeah.
It could also be a developer tenant, for example. So it's very easy for you to try this out without having to, get a whole subscription and everything else set up. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in. And this one, I want to sign into this ZD MV6. So it's going to bounce me around here just a little bit.
When you're talking about the subscription, you're talking about for MC365, or are you talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there's two subscriptions, right? So there's a tenant subscription, which a developer tenant lets you try that without having a full tenant subscription. But if you're in an enterprise, you probably have a developer tenant and you probably have a sandbox and a bunch of stuff that they're managing for you.
Okay.
But then there's also a subscription for SharePoint Embedded. So SharePoint Embedded is an Azure service. And so when you start using it in production, you're going to connect it to an Azure subscription, just like with any other Azure technology.
Got it. All right.
So Now you'll see I have this notion of creating a trial container type over here in the lower left-hand corner. I'm going to go ahead and click that. And a trial container type is a special type of artifact that we create so that developers can try this and get hands-on for free, right?
Okay.
And so I'm just going to go ahead and say VS Code Live is the name, and there we go. And then you also connect to an app inside Azure, because of course, if you are working in a custom app and you're using Entra in order to go ahead and authenticate people, you have to have that app set up in order to manage all of that, right? So we're going to go ahead and create a sample app. And then you'll see down here on the lower right-hand side, it's creating an app and it's creating a container type. And it's going to pop up in just a second and make sure that I want to go ahead and register this. And so we'll say yes as soon as that comes up.
Can you scroll the horizontal bar a little
Yeah.
higher so we can see what's?
Can
Oh,
I?
I thought something was happening like the terminal.
No, it's just right in here. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
So the container type has been created. And yes, we're going to register on local tenant. And so this is just giving us the OAuth permissions for us to do things in the background, because of course we need to have the app, we need to have a way to actually authenticate with that app, and then we also need to grant it permissions to use some of these things. So I'm going to go ahead and just register. It'll take just a second. There we go. And it requires admin consent. Grant consent, you bet. And it's going to ask me to come over here again, and I'm going to be this ZDMV6. This is just a regular M365 developer tenant.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go ahead and accept some of these permissions. Notice it has these file storage containers that we've been talking about. There we go. And it's going to bounce me back over here. And we'll say yes. Okay, good. So now I am over here on the lower left-hand side, and you can see that I have this container type, and I have a owning app, and I could do things like look at credentials, right? Sorry, not credentials. I want to talk about, where is it here? There we go, properties. So these are the properties that we configure for you in the background. As a new developer, you don't want to get too lost in this stuff, because honestly, there's a lot of detail in here. But what I want you to pay attention to is this notion of an owning tenant. So this is my Azure tenant, right? This is when we're doing MSAL to actually connect a user into a tenant. It needs to have this tenant ID in order to identify the correct tenant to authenticate with. So then we have this notion of an owning app. Remember how I said there has to be an app for this too? So this is our client ID. And then this container type ID, this is the unique thing that actually goes ahead and makes sure that this app has control of these SharePoint embedded containers. Okay, and this is as simple as it is. So you can now actually use this to go ahead and run a brand new SharePoint embedded app. In fact, why don't we update the app that we had, and we'll see this in action. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
This, by the way, once you set this configuration up, it's something you just need to do once, or
Yeah.
do you have to? Okay.
Yeah, you do it once, and when you think about your regular software development lifecycle, you're probably going to have like a dev tenant where an individual developer is doing work, and they're going to have a container type that's appropriate for the dev tenant. Then you're going to have a QA environment of some kind that you're going to use. You're probably going to have a container type that's part of that QA environment. And then, of course, you're going to have production, and you're probably going to have an app and container type as part of that. It's pretty straightforward, right? It's exactly what you would expect from a normal app development process.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'm just going to copy this. And I've got this, which is my regular one. And it's going to be a little bit of typing here. As I get out of that. And then And so I'm going to show you how you can put these together with vibe coding so that you don't have to do it this way, because I'll tell you from a cutting and pasting standpoint, I feel like I've spent enough of my life doing that. And so I love the fact that the GitHub Copilot agent can do it for us. I'm just going to make these different. There we go. Okay.
Now, right now, you just showed us this manually just for us to see what's going on behind the scenes rather than just using agent, right?
Yeah. So I want generally, okay, so I am a little, it's funny. We get into this new AI assistant programming world, and I still like to know a little bit about what's going on, you know? And so when you think about kind of the pieces that are here, it's actually useful to know that we're tying this client and everything in here. But in the demo that I'm going to show you here in just a second, we're not going to do that. We're going to kind of skip that aspect and not worry about it too much, right? Because the system actually does a pretty nice job putting it together. So let's see. I think this is the one that's probably running. Not that one. That one. There we go. This is the one that's running. So I'm going to go ahead and just restart this thing. There we go. And we're going to go over to this one. And we're just going to hit localhost 5173. And this should look familiar, right? This looks the same. It's the same app that we were using before, just connected to a different tenant and to a different container type. And so when I sign in with Microsoft, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign in with, you saw me do that ZD MV6 before. This is just my M365 developer tenant.
Okay.
Okay. It's going to request some permissions, which I'll go ahead and say yes. And here we go. Now, when we go to documents, I don't have any containers. I haven't created anything yet, right? This is all blank. It's all brand new. And so when I create a new container, we'll say, hello world 1, this, right? And now I have the same type of system that I was using before, but I actually changed it so it's all working now within a whole different tenant. So if I view documents, it's going to have me sign in again. I'm not sure why. That's okay. Oh, it's because of this part. But I'm going to go ahead and upload some files. And we'll upload some different files here just so you can see that this is all live. I live in Colorado, so I have a couple sample documents around Colorado mining history. It's going to go ahead and upload these. And of course, I can click on Colorado mining history. And once I authenticate it and it knows who I am, I can right away go into the web client for Word. And you can see that I can also do the hello. Right? So what we just did was we figured out a way to go ahead and get started for free with SharePoint Embedded using the SharePoint Embedded extension in VS Code. And we just updated the information and we're able to get up and running right away.
Cool. Now, are there any limitations to the forms of documents that we could do all this?
This is great. This is actually one of my favorite questions. So remember I was saying that Microsoft has been going down this document management journey for a couple of decades. So the way that this works is that you get the full edit and collaboration experience for Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, right? Because those are things that we own. Now, you also have rich preview in interaction with more than 300 file types.
Like
and so,
RTF and what about like custom like documents? Like what are like Google Docs? Like if you downloaded that and uploaded it, would that work?
Wow, I've never tried that. I don't know the answer to that question. I feel like, because with Google Docs, you can actually download in a number of different formats, right? So like, let's say you download it as a PDF. Well, you can throw a PDF in here and you can preview a PDF, no problem, right? It just works. Let's say that you download it as a DOCX, right? Obviously, you'd be able to do that. Let's say you're somehow managing DICOM files, right? You're in the medical imaging industry. We preview those. If you are in the construction industry and you've got architectural plans, CAD CAM drawings. We preview those. Literally, it's more than 300 file types. It's kind of insane how much you can do, and you just throw it at a preview URL, and it renders it on the screen appropriately.
Cool. Now, if there isn't a particular file type that it supports now, is there a way to make it extendable? You know, like how VS Code might not be able to do something, but then you can add an extension and then it can do it, you know?
So first, I actually don't know the answer to that question. I think the answer is probably yes. And the answer would, well, it's not probably. The answer is definitely yes, because you would just build in your own custom handler for it into your app. So one of the great things actually about having this be API only is that you're not constrained by whatever UX we give you. So like I said, we give you a lot, right? So you can go in and you get the full Word, Excel, PowerPoint. You have preview for more than 300 file types. You have all the back-end admin stuff that your enterprise users and your enterprise admins are going to demand. That's all there. But you, at the end of the day, control the user experience, because this is your app and you're just using our APIs. And so if you have a special file type, and so I don't know what the special file type is. Let's assume like it's a special Sankey diagram, right? Like I've been vibe coding Sankey diagram generators lately. So those are the flow diagrams that show all the inputs. They all come together and then they all go out. Anyway, let's say you have a special file type like that needs to be handled in a special way. You just do that as part of your doc. You can store the data in SharePoint Embedded. It'll still index over it, and you can still search for it. You can still do all the things. But at the end of the day, when you're rendering it, you could render it in whatever way you wanted.
So, what'd be interesting is, because sometimes customization like that is necessary depending on the client that you're using. I wonder how good, and this is probably a good segue also for agent mode, that you could use AI to help you build something custom like that, but yeah.
Well, okay, so the two things that I actually want to finish on, and we got plenty of time here, so this is going to be super fun. I want to talk about both agent mode. We're going to show you agent mode in action, building a SharePoint embedded app. You can tell I'm a little excited about this. I've been nerding out about this for quite a while now. And then we're also then going to go into MCP. So we're going to show MCP working against SharePoint embedded. And it's got so much interesting promise to it. It's crazy. Sound good?
Nice. Awesome. Let's do it.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and close this folder. And we're going to go ahead and open a different folder. And you get to see what a mess my computer is. Congratulations. Okay, so here we are. This is a blank slate, and we're going to go into Open Chat. Now, I think probably everybody watching knows this, but I didn't when I first started doing this, so I'm going to tell you anyway. When you come in here, you want to make sure that you're looking down at this agent, edit, or ask, because these are three different experiences. I was in ask mode at first, and I was like, wait a second, this is useless. It's not helping me at all.
It's not so fancy.
Yeah, I'm like, come on, help me out here,
I still got to work.
Yeah, which, don't get me wrong, like I like work and I like doing this kind of thing, but I got to tell you, and I'm sure this has got to be a universal experience for developers who've been around for a while. I can't tell you how much of my life I have given away to searching for a errant semicolon or a missing semicolon, right? Like hours trying to find why something is not working.
Yeah, it's classic.
I love the fact that I don't have to do this. Like I have a lot of joy actually in this new agentic development mode. So let's get into it. We can talk more about this. Let's get it started, and then, hey, let's invite.
You and I could appreciate the things that agent mode could do, whereas like new people that are just starting with it, they didn't know the suffering that we had to go through to find semicolons. When I was your age, I had to go up and down mountains to find a semicolon.
Right? Okay. Yeah,
no
I had to
shoes.
walk uphill in the snow both ways.
No shoes.
Yeah. And so I'm also making sure that this is a public client application. And I'm just going to go ahead and paste in the codes here. Okay.
Vinod's asking a question. I'll just answer him.
Yeah.
Uh, Copilot is free for lifetime as of now, but there are different levels to it. So there is if you go to like GitHub Copilot's website, producer, maybe you could throw that up. You'll see that the free version is limited to, I believe, like 2,000 code completions, and but when you pay like for like the premium level, then it's unlimited. So that part is free for life as of now, unless something changes and then it's not. But for now, you're good.
Yeah. Unless something changes and then it's not. That's the way of the world right there, my friend. Yeah. Okay. Now, one of the things that's very interesting to me, and I think on some of your videos you've talked about this, and I've seen Burke talk about this too, is sometimes it's best to be not too directive with an agent, right? And so I've gone through a couple of experiments, and I'm thinking about this largely because of, it came up here to install the Azure MSL browser and React. At first, when I was being pretty prescriptive, it was dropping back versions and there was all kinds of version incompatibility. And then I was trying to be very prescriptive and smart and be like, well, install just this version, right, that I wanted, which was the most recent. And then I got over myself and I just said, just use MSAL. And it's like, no problem, we got it, right? Which is pretty interesting to me. So I think it is one of those lessons that everybody learns as they're starting to do this AI assisted programming.
Yeah, it's like a dance, so you need to know.
Mhm.
So you can't be too greedy at first. You have to like know how to like use it properly.
Yeah. So we actually, it's funny, we have scripts for this too, by the way. So that samples directory that I mentioned, all of these scripts that I'm doing are actually over in that samples directory, which is aka.ms/spe-samples.
Mhm.
And so if you go over there, you're going to see prompts, and there are prompts for different aspects, all the way from starting at nothing and, building up a pretty full featured app to then also adding the Copilot chat. Now, the Copilot chat stuff is a little bit different than GitHub Copilot, right? M365 Copilot does require a subscription today for you to be able to use it. And so if you have a subscription, you're going to be able to make that work. If you don't have a subscription, that doesn't work for you yet. But in the developer tenants that I was talking about, they just introduced a ability for you to actually add some of that in there with a developer subscription. I'm not sure of all the details. It's worth checking out. Okay, so it looks to me like I got a couple of errors over here, but I'm going to go ahead and say I'll keep these. And then let's see what it wants to do next.
I can't
Oh, yeah.
wait to would this be useful for you? Because I think it would be for
Mm-hmm.
me, but you know how like it does all this work and
Yeah.
then it has like the summary you skim through. Like, what if there was like a feature where you could have it like read out loud what it's doing so you can
Yeah.
like hear instead of like scrolling through?
Yeah.
Would you care about that or no?
So it's funny. I actually really like the idea of a little bit of information on here. But I work in Node a lot, right? And I started getting a little bit up on my high horse, like, oh, it's making all these changes. I don't know what it's making. I really need to be more involved in this. And then I was like, wait a second, I'll do npm install for almost anything. And that, will bring in all these dependencies and dependencies. And I have no idea what's going on in there. I just trust that it's fine. So I honestly don't know how involved I want to be on parts of this, it's so interesting because there's this vibe coding movement that people are out there where you just click accept all.
Mhm.
And I've gotten myself down some hairy rabbit holes with that are very difficult to get out of.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also kind of interesting. In 6 months, I don't know that we're going to have the same kind of concerns. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But
Yeah.
but the audio thing is really interesting. Like if it was a pair programmer, like you're almost doing pair programming with your AI, and they're just having that voice interface back and forth like you can with Copilot or ChatGPT or some of the others. That's kind of what you mean?
No, I'm talking about like right now, like under
Yeah.
chat, it says let's update the profile content.
Oh yeah.
So if it just gave like the headlines, now
Hmm.
updating profile content, Now adding simple custom CSS. It doesn't have to say
Yeah.
everything word for word, but
Yeah.
I think it would be like nice to kind of like, okay, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think actually that would be interesting, because then it's a little bit, more like, okay, well, what's happening in the background? I certainly can imagine. Um, One of the things that sometimes happens is it'll be like, I'm trying to do something. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, that didn't work. Like, I think the downside of actually paying too close of attention is you get a little stressed out. You're like, oh, what do you mean that didn't work? Well, what about that one didn't work either? Are you going to be able to fix it? And in the end, of course, it usually does. But it's an interesting question to me about kind of how that would work. Okay, I'm going to keep all this, and I don't think it's going to run yet, because it looks to me like there's some red stuff going on. Oh yeah, this configuration doesn't exist, and that's part of, let's see, graph services, and then we're just going to see about okay.
So, Reed,
Yeah.
what's your favorite model to use? Uh, Ria's asking, like, what's the best to use for Copilot? Kind of like some people have like their favorites depending on what
Yeah.
they're doing. But lately, I've been kind of a fan of Claude 3.7, what you're currently using right now. What's
So
yours?
I would be game for switching to any of them. I'll tell you, when I was practicing for this demo today, I just did Claude 3.7. And really, that's just to make sure that, in this non-deterministic world, that I feel like I can at least have some expectations about what's happening with it. Um, but I have used 4.0 quite a bit, ChatGPT 4.0 quite a 4, sorry, 4.0. I got to say it the right way. Quite a bit on some other stuff. And it's interesting to see it all come together, right? There's lots of different ways that it works well. Claude 3.7 is pretty good.
Do you ever like compare them both, like asking the same task?
So that kind of eval process that you're talking about, I have not done, right? And I'm curious about it, and I just haven't really gotten to it yet. Have you done it?
I did it a little just because I was like demonstrating like some particular task in a video. I
Yeah.
was like building a mobile app.
Okay.
Um, and so I didn't go deep into it, but it was nice to see that the suggestions were different, but I didn't think like one was necessarily better than the other. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's going to be certain cases where something that one suggests is definitely better or more efficient than the other, but it depends on how complex of the stuff that you're doing.
Yeah. Okay. So it looks like we probably have something that's going to work. Let's pop over to the browser. We'll just take a look. Um, we'll close all that stuff. Oh yeah, here we go. So it went ahead and created us some basic things. We're already signed in. If I sign out, what happens? I don't want to actually sign out of the account, because then you're going to watch me go through like all the dance. But okay, so then I can sign in, and it knows that in this browser, I know about Reed, Karlberger, Greenwood, eccentrics. Okay, good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, okay, so this is my little cheat sheet over here. And you can see I gave it, some information. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to now say, let's go ahead and manage containers, right? And we'll get this going. And this is probably where we'll stop today before we switch over to MCP. Here. I have found that I like to do pluses here. And I've actually got a couple of questions for you, because I think you're probably better at the VS Code Insiders edition than I am. So first, that thing where it says, hey, we've been iterating on this for a while. Do you want me to keep going, or do you want me to stop? Do you
Mhm.
know like what the threshold of that is? Like, how long does it actually iterate before it will pop up that message?
You know what? No, I don't know, and I feel like it's not consistent because there's been
Yeah.
some times that I feel like it popped up really fast,
Yeah.
and then there's other times it takes much longer. But I usually let it keep on going. I haven't gotten to the point where stopped it.
Yeah, that's always what I do. I'm basically like, yeah, let's just keep going. Um, there's this one app that I've been working on where, for better or worse, okay, I've been trying to do it in terms of a service layer that interacts with the database layer, and then putting an actual web app on top that just interacts with the API there. I don't normally do that for a lot of the toy examples that I do. But anytime you have that API layer that you're building, right, then you want to make sure that you've got a whole good test suite and everything else. That's one where I've had some challenges, like the deeper I go into the business requirements and the data model and everything else, that one I get some requirements in terms of generating tests. And so sometimes I've stopped it there, but that's about it. Usually when I'm doing something like this and I'm at the beginning of an app, I just let it go.
Got it.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. Okay, so I see on the screen that we got Agent, Tango, AI, and Web. I'm not sure if this is an AI commenting on us now, or if this is an actual person attendee commenting with us now. Do you know?
Wait, where?
It was just showing. It was just showing on the screen here a second ago.
Claude 3.7 gives me best results.
Yeah, but then I was looking at the username, Agent, Tango, AI, and Web. That's probably just a YouTube username. Like I didn't know maybe they're an agent or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's got to be user, because they're. I mean, unless they're actually like listening and understanding us and then like intelligently responding, but it feels
exactly.
like user.
Yeah. Okay, so this usually does a pretty good job. And what's interesting to me is I'll bring over this. So this is my cheat sheet.
Can you control plus a little, or does it not matter what we're seeing?
Yeah, there we go. It doesn't really matter, but you should be able to see a little bit better now.
Yeah.
But what I do is I first started off with there was a video that I think Burke did about a month ago where he was doing his URL tracking application, and he gave it a PRD and he said, here's this and here's this and here's this. I did a little bit like that, but I wanted to include specs about, the API patterns, right? So I was like, okay, here's what you need to know in order to create a container, for example. Here's what you need to know in order to list containers, because a lot of times this stuff, is not necessarily out there. I mean, it's out there in API documents that you can get to, but LLMs a lot of times don't know how to do this. What I have found in the non-deterministic nature of Claude 3.7 is that sometimes it actually gets really far on its own without me having to do anything around files. Like it'll go in and it will tell me, yeah, I also added the file upload capability. I'll be like, well, I didn't tell you about the file upload capability, but thank you, and it's not consistent. It's not consistent yet, but it is interesting. Okay, looks to me like something's happening over here. Let's see. I'm just gonna.
There's your answer regarding Agent Tango.
Yeah. Oh, Agent Tango, an actual person. All right, Agent Tango, welcome. But that is the kind of thing an AI might say, right? You never know.
Agent Tango.
So, okay. So there's an error here. Yeah, we'll give it a second and see if this one fixes. And if we don't get this fixed in the next couple of minutes, then I'm going to switch over to MCP because we're going for about 12 more minutes, right?
Yeah, but there's really no hard set rule.
There we go. Duplicate export statement. I got to the point now where I do actually check a lot of times for duplicate export statements, because there is something with Claude 3.7 where it does that. And so you can go in and you just look at the bottom, at the bottom of a node component or a React component where it's trying to export default and then it's a name. You'll have two of those. And that's a fairly common error that I see the LLMs make, which is interesting. Let's see. Okay, so it fixed it. That's good. Now we have to figure out what's going on in app CSS.
The view count has been increasing. We're up to 110.
All right. So hey, everybody.
Going up.
Yeah. Welcome. It's a little bit intimidating coming on to VS Code Live. There's an interesting global audience and lots of people watching you code away, and it's a little challenging, but it's been fun. This is a super good time.
No need to be intimidated. It's a safe space.
Cool. Okay. Did we get it? Looks like it.
So
there we go. Yeah. So
Reed, do you want to answer Orhan? Give maybe a short recap of what we just did.
Yeah, I will. So first, the way that this works here, I'm going to actually bring this back up on the screen because I'm sure that there's plenty of people who didn't see it. And I want to make sure that everybody understands kind of SharePoint Online versus SharePoint Embedded. So SharePoint Embedded is a developer tool. It's an API-only tool that's designed to let you surface M365 M365 document management capabilities in whatever app you're building. It's an Azure service. And so as you're working with it, you do a lot of stuff in Azure, and then you do a couple of things in M365. But very importantly, all of your files and documents are actually stored in a dedicated partition that's logically isolated from SharePoint Online. We end up with these things which are called file storage containers. It's a new document management primitive, very lightweight, very easy to instantiate in line with a web service or however it is that you're building your app. And again, they're isolated from SharePoint Online content. So when we talk about SharePoint today, we're actually talking about all the capabilities of document management in SharePoint. However, it's still separated from SharePoint Online in its own place. So that's the key thing. And then the way that we do that is we actually have a couple of configurations that we put together. So we set up an app in Azure, and that's our client ID. And of course, we have to know the tenant. And then there's something in here that actually is the glue. It is really boring glue, but it's necessary glue, called a container type ID. And it's just a UUID like this that you would be using. And we connected that in here just a second ago. I'm not sure where the app has actually put this. We're going to find out. But if Orhan, if you have more questions, let me know. But that's how you set up the connection.
Cool. Nice.
Let's see. Let's go into.
Glad we did that for all the new people that just joined last minute.
Yeah. Okay, so look at this. So I'm using the same client that I used before in the early demo. And so you can see some of the things, right? Like here is the container that I created called VS Code Live. Now, the fun part about these non-deterministic AI coding assistants, the vibe coders out here, is they do a different design every time. I have never seen this particular header on this. I didn't ask for it. It just went ahead and did that. And if we go in here and we go and say, we're going to create container, let's just see if it works. We'll do, actually, Orhan, I'm going to use you, if you don't mind, Orhan demo, as the container name.
He says thanks, by the way.
Oh, I did see that. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and create the container. And now we have a container called Orhan demo. And this is now a new special lightweight way of managing files and documents as part of any app. Okay, so it's 9:53. I could go on and talk more about how to build file management, file upload in here, but I think I want to switch over to MCP if that works.
Sure. Do you want to answer Agent Tango's question real quick?
Oh, this is a great one. What's your best approach for giving right instructions to the agent? Oftentimes it hallucinates after working on a prompt for a while, and sometimes it creates files that are not needed. Oh, near and dear to my heart right here. I don't have any magic on this one. The hard part is that it's non-deterministic. And so I've taken in my own experience as I'm working on this, I will be a little bit more directive in terms of my prompts about saying things like, do not change any code. Just answer the question and make a plan. It's a little bit more designed to help me understand the way that it's thinking before it changes, 200 lines of code, and I don't know what those are, or introduces a new file, or introduces, something that it changes something that was working just fine, but for whatever reason now it gives me this rotating Atom React app up here. So I don't have a perfect method, but that's what I do. I just get a little bit more prescriptive around don't change anything, show me your plan. And then I usually go for it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So Ria asks, is it safe to share confidential information such as API keys, tokens? Now, I was gonna mention input variables. I don't know if you use that, or how do you handle this? How would you answer her?
So in general, I don't put API keys into AIs, and I don't know exactly what the detail is, but I know that between all the engines that are out there, there's not a global standard, and I typically don't really want those API keys out there to show anybody. Now in this one, I did go ahead and paste the public information, the same information that I would put into a mobile app, for example, that is pretty easy to discover, right? I did go ahead and put that in there because it doesn't really matter. But I wouldn't, for example, if I had an API key or a database connection key, I wouldn't put that into an LLM in the same way. I don't know, Reynolds, what would you do? Like, let's say you've got a connection string for a SQL Server sitting over there, and you're using, not Entra identity, but you're using, regular SQL Server database connection identity. Like, what would you do? Would you put it in?
So I'm kind of like new to some like this area,
Yeah.
but just recently I had to create um, an app, a mobile app that used AI. It was like a basic grocery list, but I
Mhm.
enhanced it to use AI for every item that you put in. It gives you a healthier alternative.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But and I used our bring your own key
Mm.
feature,
Yeah.
and there's a way to, instead of like hard coding it,
Hmm.
because agent mode was saying, hey, the hard coded key is in there, I don't think you should be doing that. It gave me the alternative to put input variables. So then when I ran the
Hmm.
app itself asked me to like put in the key, and then it was like
Yeah.
hidden. But then there's a way you could just do that behind the scenes also, so that it's not visible. It's not just hard coded in there.
Yeah.
Input
Now,
variables.
I do want to call out something that Ria points out in this question, about how Copilot can read the open projects. It's a great point. One of the things that I like about the Microsoft Copilot approach, I do work for Microsoft. I think everybody knows that. But one of the things that I like about it is that we're very forward about our privacy commitments to our customers. And that's different than what you see with some of the other systems that are out there. And so I think I'd be more comfortable with it in something which is managed by Copilot. But I also I think this is something that we probably need more work on, to be honest. We need to have some standards as a developer community about how we're doing this and what we're doing it. Input variables are great. Any of that stuff is great.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, so we got this up and running. Pretty cool, I think, actually, in terms of how it works. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, and I'm just going to spend some time. Let's play around with a little bit of MCP. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So I'm going to do this over here, and I can actually. Should I bring up the MCP project, or no? I'm just going to interact with it for right now. Okay, so if we go over here into Tools, you will see that I have my little MCP server started right here, called just my SCP or MCP. Sorry, my SPE. I actually don't know if I need to explicitly start that or if it's just going to run for me. Show me my containers. Usually that's all I need. No, that's not the right one. Here, we're going to go ahead and stop that one. And I'm just going to come over here. I'll do a new window. And don't
Zach,
worry,
can
I'll
you
make it bigger. Go ahead.
Zach, can you explain what you mean? Unless Reed, you understand what it means. Hello, can we expect same Copilot agent? And Visual Studio. Oh my God. You know how I read that? I was just like, versus. I'm like,
You're like, wait
like,
a
what's it
second. What
comparing
are we
to?
talking about?
Yeah. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? And okay, Visual Studio 2022. Do you use Visual Studio? Read?
So I haven't really used Visual Studio that much. I use VS Code all the time, but I was working with a European SI not too long ago. They were helping us put together some stuff with SharePoint Embedded for a customer, and they were all in Visual Studio for sure. So I don't know exactly how that works with Copilot. I just don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it eventually will come, but I'm on the VS Code team. I've been tunnel vision into that.
Yeah. So okay, so here's what I did. So the MCP thing took me a little while to like figure out, but it's not too bad. And actually, you all have done some great videos on this. So you can go ahead and list your servers. And so I have this little SharePoint embedded MCP that I put together. and it's running. And so you can see all I did was I said, hey, show me my containers. And so it's like, great. It looks to us like we can find list containers in my SPE. And it says, well, what container type are you looking at? And so I actually had that pre-programmed in. So I'm going to go ahead and click on continue. And when it does this, it's actually, this feels like magic to me. Can I just tell you?
Mm-hmm.
So here's the Orhan demo that we created right at the end, right, with that new app. Here's the VS Code Live one that we were working on, and economic history and everything else. And so then let's go in and say, cool, show me econ history files, right? And so now what it's going to do is it's going to go through here, and let's see if it does the right thing. Yeah, I'll show you the files in the economic history container. I did not spell that out. I love this. And it says, hey, is that container ID this one? I have no idea. I'm going to say yes. Like, how am I supposed to remember that? I have no idea. Here we go. And then, yes, this is a lot of the econ history. So you remember how I was asking about Chicago and banks and all that kind of good stuff, and it has a bunch of bank information in here?
Mm-hmm.
This is super fun. So now I'm going to say, is there a web URL for ABN AMRO?
So the questions are pouring in now.
Oh, okay, cool.
Could you use variables in the external environment, like in a terminal, that LLMs shouldn't need to access?
I would assume so. I would think you would still have in your SDLC, you would still have, something which is appropriate for dev, something that's appropriate for QA, and then something that's appropriate for production. I could see in dev not necessarily worrying about that the same way that you would in QA or production, but that would be an interesting call.
Yeah. Ria says, thanks for the explanation. And you can exclude any file from GitHub Copilot in case you have environment variables like env files.
Awesome. Okay. I assume more questions are going to come in, but you can see that it went ahead and it found the web URL for me. So I'm just going to click on this. I've never actually tried this before. We're going to try it live together and see what happens.
All right.
Do we want it to open it? Yeah, we do. There we go. And because I was already authenticated, it went ahead and just opened us up into edit mode, right? Which is pretty darn cool. Now, in case you're curious, I'll go over here to a place where I'm not authenticated, and you can just see this in action, right? So you remember this one is the different user. This one is my little ZDMV6 user. And so when I plug in something for my other app and I try to view it, of course it comes out and attempts to get me to authenticate first, because I don't have permissions already set up in this environment to view this file. So that's just part of what you get out of the box with SharePoint Embedded. So
okay.
Anyway, we've gone through a lot today.
Yes, we have. There will be quiz after, folks, so make sure that you watch this video 5 times.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, here I'll put this back up on the screen just so that people can see it, and happy to answer any questions as people might have them. But we are doing a tour coming up in June to some cities in Europe and US. If you're not in Europe or the US, stay tuned. We'll be doing more of these in the fall. Don't know exactly where yet. But our whole mission with this is to show people how SharePoint Embedded works, help them get up and running with it, and then also, help people understand the use case for it, especially in an AI first world, because it really does make a big difference.
Nice. And if people want to follow you for your new fans that you've developed, are there social contacts that you want to share?
Yeah, the easiest way is to just get me on LinkedIn. I've kind of consolidated my socials to LinkedIn right now, which younger me has mixed feelings about, but older me is just fine with. So feel free to ask me any questions that you might have on LinkedIn. I'm happy to help out with any type of problems you might be having.
Great. This is awesome. I learned a lot today. And thanks everybody for dropping all your questions in the chats, keeping this live and entertaining. And look at that. We hardly lost anyone. We went up to like 106. I think the top was like 107.
That's
So
great.
we kept everyone's attention.
I'm really grateful that people joined. I actually think this is an incredible time to be a developer. There's a lot of kind of like hand wringing about what's the future of developers, but it's an amazing time. Like, we don't have to worry about semicolons. We get to just say, hey, do the thing, and it largely does the thing for us. Should be like just really, really enabling, unblocking, whatever the right word is. I'm just excited about it.
Yeah, the only thing that I'm concerned about is making sure that people don't get too spoiled and they actually still try to like learn what's going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it's like when things needs to get fixed, it's like, well, I don't know, I didn't, I built AI built it, make it fix itself. you know.
Well,
So
well, okay. So, like, one of the apps that I've been working on in the background is this thing that's I mentioned Sankey diagrams earlier, right? The flow diagrams. So these are all these visualizations that are out there that I think are pretty interesting, and I've had AI coders helping me through um, Sankey diagrams, Venn diagrams, radar diagrams, pipeline diagrams. There's like 10 of them in there, right?
mhm.
And I'll tell you what, you definitely need to know what it is that you're doing, because it goes down a rabbit hole, and it's like, you mean this? And like every page is different. The layout's crazy,
Yeah,
and like finally it's like I've learned a ton doing it. But I honestly think doing a project like that is an incredible learning opportunity. I've learned way more about React. Like, I'm not a React specialist. And so, but just by doing this stuff and watching it and trying to debug a little bit, React is, I'm much more comfortable with it today than I was 6 months ago. So it's a good way to learn.
yeah. Um, well, thanks so much, Reed, for this awesome presentation. People loved it, and I am going to be like closing it now. So thanks everybody
Perfect.
for joining it, for joining our stream, and please tune in again for our next live stream. And I will see you guys in the next one.
Thanks, everybody.